evening.
Blog Talk Radio.
Everybody's got the fever. This is something we all know. Fever isn't such a new thing. Fever started long ago. Never know how.
Good evening and welcome to Lynnie Godfrey, Straight No Chaser. This evening we have the continuation of the discussion about the wonderful director, producer, artisan, magnificent Lloyd Richards. And I have some wonderful guests. Two of them were here the last time we were on the air a couple of weeks ago. And then we have two additional gentlemen who have been working on projects. So this should be a very interesting evening. I hope that you all, the board is filling up already. So please get in now and don't text me because there's nothing I can do when there's no more room on the board. All right. Let me just do a little bit of housekeeping so everyone who is not familiar with this program or is listening but not in the studio will have this information. We are about to enter into the 118th episode of Lynnie Godfrey Straight No Chaser. This is 105 of all the public episodes, and you are listening to blogtalkradio.com /S as in Sam, F as in Fred, T as in Tom, H as in Harry, and the number 2. If you want to dial in during this discussion, if you're not in the studio, or if you are in the studio, you've already dialed 516-453-6063. And if you're in the studio, once you get on board, and if you want to ask a question or say something about the subject that we're discussing, please press the number 1. That will allow me to know that, to recognize you and put you on the air, so you will then be able to communicate your question or your statement. No.
I want to stop right now because I want to say that I let it go all the way through, because that is normally how we start Lynnie Godfrey Straight No Chaser when it is in the radio form. But we are in the webinar form today. This particular episode is being recorded live on Wednesday, July the 24th at about 7:20 p.m. And I have a guest that is in the webinar with me as we listen to this rebroadcast, which was February the 28th, a recording of the 4 gentlemen that I've asked to be my guests as they talked about the preparation of the co-renaming of 47th Street and Broadway to be renamed at this point, or co-named Lloyd Richards Way. Before we go any further, so that you know that I'm listening to this with another guest and it's live, I'm going to ask my guest now, Julius Hollingsworth, who is on this recording, to say good evening to you. Julius?
Hello, how are you? I'm so glad to be a part of this broadcast and to once again honor the legacy that is Lloyd Richards.
Well, I'm glad to have you. It is a rebroadcast of this. This is the second installment. The first installment was February 7th with just you and Jack talking about it. And then we came back and added these other 2 gentlemen. So I'm going to now continue on this broadcast, unless you have something that you want to say. When you want me to stop it, just let me know. Give me something in the chat. Give me some indication, and we can discuss even more in depth what is going on in conversation in that recording that we might update as all of this has happened already. So I'm going to continue on. Are you all right, Julius?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty, here we go.
Now, with all of that said, we are about at the point now when I'd like to start introducing the guests that I have. The two gentlemen that were here last week, or 2 weeks ago. I keep on saying last week, 2 weeks ago. First, I'm going to start with Julius. And Julius Hollingsworth has been in my life for a very long time. I believe we met at NEC, and then my relationship with him blossomed all the way through to the point that Julius and I belong to the same nonprofit ensemble. But let me just tell you a little bit about him again. He is a journeyman in the entertainment industry. He's been in it for more than 54 years. He started with Hal DeWitt, a wonderful name, at La Mama when he was about 13 years old. He has been the recipient of the Torchbearer Award and Ford Scholarships and the Diana Sand Scholarship. And he was directed by Lloyd Richards in The Sign in Sidney Brunstein's Window. Next, and so Julius, before we move on to the next guest here, why don't you say hello so they can recognize your voice distinctively on air? Julius?
Hello, Julius Hollingsworth here. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Say that again.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay.
And so next we have Jack Shalom. And Jack is a producer and co-host of WBAI's FM's Arts Express. He's been an educator in the New York public school system for over than 35 years, and his relationship with Lloyd, I think he will tell you about as being directed by Lloyd, again, in The Sign of Sidney Brunstein's Window. Now, the third, Jack, please, I keep on forgetting to let you all say hello. Say hello so the audience can recognize your voice. I have four men here, so you're going to have to say who you are probably when you start talking. Go ahead, Jack. Say hello.
Yeah. Hi, this is Jack Shalom, and I'm so happy to be on your show, Lynnie. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about Lloyd. It's really a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming, taking the time, and doing all the wonderful things that you've done thus far. And now I want to talk about my next guest, who really has been on this program before. I believe he was like on number 4 of the 105 episodes. It was April the 21st, 2021, when Chet Whye came on this program. And Chet had a unique situation in that he is not in the theater per se, like the rest of us, but he's of the theater and he's of politics, and he's been doing so many wonderful things of yet. But when he was on the show, then we talked about him being the campaign director for Harlem for Obama on 2 cycles, 2008 and 2012. And then we then discovered that in 1988 he was an alternate delegate for the DNC, for the strategist for Jesse Jackson. So, and then he has an aerospace background as a senior staff engineer. Yes. Again, he was appointed to co-coordinator for Mike Dukakis, and he was a co-coordinator of the Rainbow Coalition in 1989. And it goes on and on, NAACP, Urban League. It goes on and on and on. And he is probably one of the most charismatic speakers that I know. He is always involved in what is going on politically as well as socially in the community. So, Chet, are you here today?
Hey there, Lynnie. How are you?
Yes,
I am
well,
here.
my friend.
It's so glad to be here.
It's so good. Oh, thank you. I mean, it's so interesting to have you now. You did also a pilot that we did for PBS as well as the show before. So, thank you so much for coming back and always being
And remember what
willing
we
to
talked
come
about.
in.
Remember
Yes.
what we talked about, the intersection of politics and art.
Yes. Very, very interesting how, and now it is even more prevalent in the theater today and in politics today, but I'm sure we're going to touch on that a little bit in this conversation, but maybe that's for a whole nother episode one day. And so thank you, my friend, for coming on in. And then I have a special guest that is here. For me, he's special because I really never met Scott when I was studying with his father at Hunter College. This was before he went to Yale, and he had several years there, and it was to my advantage as I transferred there from Hampton University because I wanted to be in New York to study acting. It was just something that I had discovered as a freshman in college, and I didn't have the opportunity to meet Scott Davenport Richards. But let me tell you a little bit about him. He has a range of talent. You can tell by what I'm about to say about you. He's an award-winning composer and librettist. Now, that's the first thing that really hit my mind, in that he is in the world of music and operatic and classical music. In the New York City Opera has performed 2 of his works. Part of it was on the Vox Festival, Star Across the Ocean in Paris, 1965, featuring another guest that we've had on here with his wife, Deborah, Chuck Cooper. And so I know you know them well. And for the public theater, he completed commissions. Also, one, I believe, is Rumble of Myth with Marcus Gardley, who is a wonderful, wonderful playwright. Then we go to the point where now that's musical. Now let's go back to when he performed as an actor on Broadway in a play directed by his father. The original role of Sylvester, if one knows Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, you know that is the character that almost does destroy the recording session in the original Broadway production of August Wilson's Ma Rainey Black Bottom, and he assisted his father in that, along with 3 other Wilson works. His listing of awards would take us until the end of the hour to go in, but I'm going to do just a few of them. He's the recipient of the Jonathan Larson, the Frederick Lowe, the Shin Family Foundation, and the New York State Council of the Arts Composition Awards. He is a professor at of composition and musical theater at Montclair State, and he is a recurring guest with NYU's Tisch School of the Arts with the Graduate Musical Theater Writing Program. So with that said, and I'm out of breath saying so much more. There's much more. I'm really interested one day in talking to him alone about finishing up a work about Paul Robeson. But Scott Davenport Richards, please say hello to everyone, please.
Hello, Lynnie. Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here for the first time, unlike everyone else.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for consenting to come in to speak. Thank you for your contribution in the arts, for the legacy that we that all the gentlemen here are concerned about preserving in the name of your father. Thank you, all gentlemen. So now that that you all have been introduced and everyone kind of knows, still your voices are very similar. So you're going to have to tell them at first who it is that's speaking once I start asking these questions. But I'm going to go back to the foundation, back to Julius. Julius, when did this idea first hit you, please? And tell us what the idea is.
Okay. This is how it came about. Jack, we hadn't talked in about 40 years or so. And he contacted me through my website, and we got on the phone and talked about how Lloyd had made a huge impression on us together. And I saw in the paper that they were talking about naming several theaters for Black artists. And of course, the August Wilson had already been done, but the James Earl Jones and the Lena Horne had not been named at that point. And so we were saying, because of all the different things that Lloyd had done, that he would be an amazing person to have a street name. So we tried to get in contact with different people, and it seemed like what was happening is it didn't quite happen the way we wanted it to, and they had decided on people like James Earl Jones, people with larger name
visibility. Visibility.
And so
now I'm going to stop you right now, because I want Jack to pick up from right there. Jack, when realizing that portion of it had been decided already, you were not deterred. What did you decide?
Well, we were not deterred, so we started brainstorming ideas. And eventually what we came up with was having the city proclaim a day in Lloyd's honor. And we wanted it to be June 29th, because that was the day that Lloyd was born, and it was also the day that he passed away. And in addition to that would have been a wonderful celebration, and it did come to pass, and it was a wonderful celebration, but we thought we needed something even more permanent to mark his name as such a significant figure in American theater. Because though theater people knew who Lloyd Richards was, the general public didn't know as much, because Lloyd didn't toot his own horn. So we came up with the idea of a street. Yeah, so we came up with the idea of a street naming, and in particular, the northwest corner of West 47th Street and Broadway, because West 47th Street was the street where the iconic, legendary production of A Raisin in the Sun took place at the Ethel Barrymore Theater that Lloyd had directed, and which, of course, starred Sidney Poitier, and every single person in that cast became famous.
Yeah. Now, Chet, tell me.
Maybe we should pass it
now
on.
Now I'm moving fast from one of you to the other, because I kind of want to get everybody an opportunity to talk about the different levels of their participation and their thought process in this. So, Chet, now, when did you become involved in this?
I think I first became involved in August of 2022. So the effort had matured, to a point, and then it became the crossroads where how is this going to be delivered politically, and the situation with deciding what the streets are going to be co-named and all usually become the responsibility of the community board. And community boards are makeups of community members in certain council-managed districts. and they give the go-ahead on whether a street is going to be renamed. In this case, we had to deal with Community Board 5 at Times Square. And the sticking point was that for 14 years they had a moratorium on renaming streets, and that was a hard nugget to break. And I think at the time, the Celebrating Lloyd Richards group had been frustrated by a little lack of attention to the effort by Community Board 5. It wasn't total, but it wasn't moving. And with me, I had some experience in breaking that. But in this case, Community Board 5, the argument, the underlying argument, which we never had to make publicly, all right, was that Times Square belonged to the entire city, not just the Community Board there. And it affects the entire city, and the significance of Lloyd Richards could not be ignored anymore. And we wanted to move on with it. And the community boards actually are under the wing of whatever bureau president they reside. All right. And that meant involving Mark Levine, and also a lot of sway as far as the council person. And we had to go pretty much to both of them and make an appeal. And we got a very good response from them, and especially the effort that Julius and Jack made personally was crucial in that endeavor. So the background or the support piece was that we put together a letter and made an effort to contact every single councilmanic district office, every single council person, and let them know about the history of Lloyd, the significance of Lloyd Richards, and that we wanted them to support the renaming of the street. So we sort of, spread the advocacy in the council, and kept with that effort. And pretty soon, we were able to do. There was a name. Of course, Jack alluded to it. It was a name change of the group. It was Celebrating Lloyd Richards Committee, I think, before, and we added 629 as a point of significance in the title. That any time that the group was mentioned, that would be in the title, and then also stress the urgency of us getting some things done by 629. So lo and behold, last year, 629, Mark Levine issued a proclamation that Manhattan recognized 629 as Lloyd Richards Day. And we celebrated that in front of the August Wilson Theater, which was very appropriate. So in working this, eventually on December 20th of last year, Council passed a resolution that included the authorization of the co-naming of 47th Street as Lloyd Richards Way. And in discussing what would be a good time to have the ceremony, changing the street name, eventually was resolved that 6/29/2024 would be a great time to do that.
Well, now that was a process, and so everyone had their own category of pushing it forward. So, Scott, when did you realize? When did you were made aware of that this movement was happening about your father?
I forget exactly when it was exactly. It was maybe about 3 years ago, and I heard from Julius and Jack, and they said, we want to go forward and try to do this. Is that okay? And I said, of course that's okay. I'm so pleased to.
Yes.
And in what ways can I help? And so that was okay. So I've been up. They have spearheaded the whole thing, and we're so grateful that they have.
Let me just say this one thing too. We were lucky. I was lucky enough to be able to find get Scott's information from a mutual acquaintance, friend of both Scott and I's, and that was Julia Pearlstein.
Oh, that's so funny. I forgot it was Julia. Okay.
Yeah, it was Julia. Julia, where to find you at Montclair, and that's so she was a great help in that way. So I just wanted, to make sure that I give credit to everybody that's been such a help in making all of this come together. So yeah, she was the person that connected.
Yes, that's an important thing.
You met Julia as well. She was a playwright that wrote a piece about the ladies who the Radium Girls, I think it is called.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted everyone, including myself, to become familiar with the process, with the inception of it and where it is now. Before we get into another part of the conversation, I want to several times tell people when this is happening, where it is happening, so that they don't walk away from here not thinking, well, I don't know when this is supposed to happen. So can you be very specific and say what date that it is and where everyone will be able to celebrate this? Can you do that, Chet? Is that you? Is it you, Julius? Is it Julius or Jack?
I can say a little bit about it and take it back to Julius, but it will be 6/29, the day that Lloyd Richards was born, the day he died, 6/29/2024. We will be on the corner of 47th Street and Broadway celebrating this great man. 6/29/2024. The time is to be determined, but I implore everyone listening to this to find Celebrating Lloyd Richards 6.29 on Facebook, and you will be able to follow the happenings, and you will know before the public announcement when at the exact time and that everything will happen. But you will also get an education about Lloyd Richards. And many of the contributors to this page actually knew Lloyd Richards. They worked with him as colleagues or students or knew him as a friend. They knew Lloyd Richards, and some of the contributions on the postings are really, really eye-opening. So that's Facebook, Celebrating Lloyd Richards 6/29.
Thank you.
I want to stop right here, and I want to say, Julius, if you can hear me, please confirm that you can hear me and that your mic is working.
Yes, my mic is working.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you and our guests who are beginning to populate the webinar. But isn't it interesting to be where we are now, here in July, almost a month later, and this was at least, 5 months ago, 4 months ago, that we were talking about the projection of this. Right now, I would like you to say to me, we celebrated that day on June the 29th, on that Saturday. We were there early. Everything got really moving. By 12, almost 12:30, we had cut the ribbon. Where are we now? How has that progressed, and what effect do you think it has had on our community with the wonderful amount of people who attended it? We filled up the entire block. How do you think this can continue to be a celebration of not only Lloyd and his work, but the history of theater and the contributors to it.
Well, I think what it does is it talks about the possibility of connection and the safety in terms of working together to make things happen. Lloyd was somebody who was very quiet about his help and aid to people. He wanted each person to try and find it their own way, but was always a soft space for someone to find the way creatively. And I think we're in a right now, as in, you know, the political time that we're in and all the things that were happening on the 29th. It was a huge amount of energy that was happening around, you know, protecting free speech and making things that or people who were invisible visible. So I always think that, you know, it's 65 years before a person of color became had a street named in the Times Square area. I think that's it's the first person in all the time that
all the contributions, all the wonderful artists, all of the talent that has really passed through that community. What we're recognizing, and Chet has said in the interview, is that it was a moratorium of 14 years. But before that, before the 14 years, there was no one of color that had any co-naming of any street from them. And, you know, we are, as you mentioned, the atmosphere and the landscape that we're in now, this is Wednesday, July 24th. We are entering almost the 8 p.m. Hour. We'll probably be on a little bit longer than that because I've planned it so that we had a little bit more time between playing most of the interview and then speaking. But we are in an interesting place now, one that we didn't even think that was going to happen on the 29th of June, where we have to be able to participate and have voices heard, the underrepresented, the unseen and unheard voices are beginning to mount up and be heard. And I think it's a tribute to people like Lloyd, who was very, very quiet about his accomplishments. No one knew until he passed away all of the things that he had been involved in, all the boards that he was in, all the things that he initiated, that he quietly worked through that. But it's necessary for people to have recognition so that the society at large understands the accomplishments. Because if they don't know the accomplishments, then in an ignorant way, they think that no accomplishments have been made. So with that said, I think I'll go back to the interview for a few more minutes and see what we can do. It's been interesting listening to all of this before it happened, but you all had done the work, so you knew it was going to happen. Here we go.
Thank you. Now, Scott, I have a question.
Yes.
Your father, you have to know, was a father-like figure to so many of us, those who studied with him, those of us who worked with him. I've had the pleasure of doing both because he took me up to the O'Neill. But how does it feel to have to share such a lovely man? Because he taught me so much about calmness and peace. My question is, what kind of father was he, and how was it to share him with all of us all the time?
Well, I didn't necessarily have the impression of having to share him, and that's maybe one of the wonderful things he did is that unlike a lot of directors, when I was young, he chose to essentially make teaching and teaching universities the center of his living. So while he continued to do professional work in New York and occasionally in Los Angeles and occasionally, in Toronto, he was not a director who had to be on the road all the time. He did not have to go off to in order to make a living, do seven regional productions a year in order to put it all together. So he was based. He was the head of acting at NYU. Then he moved to Hunter, and then eventually he went to Yale. So he was home, and we saw him, and we would see. We, unlike other director fathers, went to school with kids who had director fathers. We would see him every day, pretty much, with the exception here or there. He was extremely supportive. He had extremely high expectations of us. Artistically, around the dinner table, probably the worst thing you could be was a bad actor. Like there's nothing worse than being a bad actor around the dinner table. And so it made us very afraid to not be. But at the same time, he was encouraging and was patient. And I think for both my brother and I, he wanted us to be able to become artists, patient with the time it took to become a true artist, and we had that patience in both our young upbringing and our development as adults. I would say that's one aspect of what he did, because he was a teacher and he knew what it took to develop.
I found his patience. I think that's a word. His patience was just admirable. In class, there were people the first class I had with him was the history of Black theater. So it wasn't an acting class, but he integrated some of the acting in it. And most of those people were not, they weren't artists. And his patience with people who were not that, and not being judgmental at all. But most of all, I think my lesson from him is I have a hair temper. I do. Most people don't know that I do, but it's because of him that he used to say to me, "You light up the room, but not in the right way." So he said, "You must learn to light it up in a different way, Lynnie. You must." And I looked at him, and I had never really heard that about my temper, because I could pop off immediately. But he said it in the most gentle, sweet way that I can still hear his voice saying it to me right now. And that's not to say that I won't pop off every once in a while now. I mean, he didn't change me all of that much. But it is really a very significant part of my delivery and when I direct. One of the things that I admired about him was his sweetness, his kindness, the ability to make you feel protected and safe in his presence. When you worked with him, when you assisted him, when you worked with him as an actor, Scott, how was that? How was it? What did you observe about your father?
Well, he was, again, patient with me, because I came into Ma Rainey with less experience. I was playing a young role, so it was sort of an okay situation, because I was playing a much younger role, and so I was a kid in the group. But I was playing Ma Rainey's stuttering nephew, and one of the things I never forget that he told me, and the advice he gave to me, is, you are, in your action as an actor, you have to make sure that you are trying not to stutter. You place the impediment, but your action is to not stutter, because you want to get past it. And that definition of an actor's action has stayed with me all the way through almost everything I've done. Also, then when I was assisting him, and I forget, it was probably 2 trains running, and there was an actor who was not doing something that Lloyd wanted. Lloyd had given him a note, and I was taking Lloyd's notes at that time, and he was not really responding to this note. And I frustrated and said, "Why don't you just tell him what to do?" He says, "No, if we tell him what to do, he won't own it. He has to we have to find a way to get him to invent it for himself, so that it's true to him, that it's true, it's real to him." So he had the patience over 3 or 4 performances to lead him to ask him questions that would lead him in a direction to make a more active choice or make a more appropriate choice to the situation. And he had that patience that others and other directors and especially producers or playwrights often don't have.
No, I think yes. And gentlemen, I am going to go back to you all, but of course my discussion with Lloyd is exciting to talk to Scott about him because there. How was it? What did you observe about your father?
Well, he was, again, patient with me because I came into Ma Rainey with less experience. I was playing a young role, so it was sort of an okay situation because I was playing a much younger role. And so I was the kid in the group. But I was playing Ma Rainey's stuttering nephew. And one of the things I'll never forget that he told me and the advice he gave to me is, you are, in your action as an actor, you have to make sure that you are trying not to stutter. You place the impediment, but your action is to not stutter because you want to get past it. And and that definition of an actor's action has stayed with me all the way through almost everything I've done. Also, then when I was assisting him, and I forget, it was probably 2 trains running, and there was an actor who was not doing something that Lloyd wanted. Lloyd had given him a note, and I was taking Lloyd's notes at that time, and he was not really responding to this note. And I frustrated and said, "Why don't you just tell him what to do?" He says, "No, if we tell him what to do, he won't own it. He has to we have to find a way to get him to invent it for himself, so that it's true to him, that it's true, it's real to him." So he had the patience over 3 or 4 performances to lead him to ask him questions that would lead him in a direction to make a more active choice or make a more appropriate choice to the situation. And he had that patience that others and other directors and especially producers or playwrights often don't have.
No, I think yes. And gentlemen, I am going to go back to you all, but of course my discussion with Lloyd is exciting to talk to Scott about him because I find that working with some playwrights, there's some, not all. There is a need for you to add water and stir and have instant, gratification right there. You know, they want it on the spot. And it is the patience that is needed for that actor to grow to where they need to go on their own without that definition. And it is that the direction that he gave you was the direction he gave us in class for those of us who were doing emotionally charged pieces. And there were several actors who wanted to cry, and you could see them like just squeezing, trying to get the tears out. And the point was that he said was, but the point is that you try not to cry. I mean, that whole being of trying not to be vulnerable is what makes it harder for you to hold it back, and that's what we see. So it was wonderful being under his tutelage. I will say that, and I am grateful to you, all of you who are doing this, because I think that it is a long time in coming, and I'm hoping that everyone who is involved in it, as Julius is always so concerned to make sure that people understand and appreciate everyone. It took a village to get it this way. Now, I want to know, and I'm going to ask Jack, you and Julius, in this particular day, you are the artisans now of this and the architects, I believe, of this. What is it that we are going to experience when we get it on June 29th?
And it is here, ladies and gentlemen, that I think that I'm going to pause and break this up to two parts. We've had a little technical glitch so that there probably is going to be maybe 2 to 3 parts of this because the signal ended, but we have yet about another half hour of this broadcast to listen to, and I will make sure that it is a continued series, that we will broadcast it in the second and third part. Julius, you're still with us. Do you have anything to say before we end this segment of it this evening?
Well, I just I would am I talking live now?
Yes, you're talking live now, and you have to talk a little louder.
Okay. What I would say is that we are seeing once again the intersection of art and politics and how important all of that comes together. And I don't think it's a mistake that all of this is happening when it's happening. I think we're on the precipice of something that I believe that many will never believe would have happened. And I'm only seeing the positive. And I think for me, it all was starting to come together on the 29th. There was the LGBTQ stuff that was happening coincidentally the same day that, that Lloyd's birthday celebration was happening, and that it was the first person of color and the 65th anniversary of Raisin in the Sun all this year, and all of those things coming together, talking about the haves and the have-nots, and the folks that were invisible to so many, and the whole fact that this man who is so iconic could be so invisible to so many, and yet be as powerful a person as he was, that right now that the invisible is becoming visible, that this is the time. I was saying before, this is the time where we are the hope that the slaves were waiting for. And so everybody should be getting out to vote. And
I believe I agree with that. We are the group, the underserved, the underrepresented, and that shall rise to the top.
absolutely.
I want to
Absolutely.
thank you, Julius. I'm going to do this. I'm going to stop it at this half-hour mark because I'm afraid that even with all of the digital issues that we're having and universally, all the way global issues, that I want this to have a continuity about it. So I want to stop this and say to the audiences who will view this on Facebook and possibly on YouTube that this will be part one. And we will see how we do part two and possibly part three so that you will be able to have a continuity, but you'll always be able to watch them all together because we will post them like that. The first post will go up in the next day, but the other two, we will work on a schedule as to when we're going to finish the interview, when you all, those people who want to participate, are available to come in and comment while we are talking about this, how timely it all is. So thank you so very much for really being there, making this happen, being able to comment on it now in real time. And I hope that you are available for us to continue this. And with that said, I will look straight into the camera and say, normally I play some music off, and I'm going to see if I can go to the end of this and find the off playing music to play us off. And I thank you for listening to this, for having the patience to tune in week after week when there were delays. And we will continue this interview, part one and possibly part two and three on the post. You will get it. And it's Lynnie Godfrey, Straight No Chaser. Thank you for coming. And we'll see you on the radio, hopefully.
Me, baby, when you hold me tight.
In my career. So, with that, find
Everybody's got the fever. This is something we all know. Fever isn't such a new thing. Fever started long ago. Never know how much I love you. You never know how much I care. When you put your arms around me, I get a feeling that's too hard to bear. You give me fever. When you kiss me, fever, when you hold me tight.
Okay. Can you hear me?